hypocrisy of the general white society of the time that he could not rely on. He supposed he might get more support for the return of black society to their homeland from the KKK than the silent white majority. He was eventually accused of mail fraud, sentenced, jailed, finally deported without fulfilling his dream. They called it his lack of strong business skills, though there may have been more suspicious factors typical of the time. And in 1938, who we've just heard from, Lead Belly, used the actual phrase, "stay woke," in reference to the Scottsboro Boys, a group of 9 young black teenagers who were traveling, hitchhiking by train, and found and falsely accused of rape of 2 white women in Alabama, 1931. Much later, one of the women even recanted and said it wasn't true. She was caught up in the moment of protecting herself. Though the other one never did recant. A lynch mob was formed that was untypically disbanded at that time, although all were convicted and served long parts of extreme sentences, including the death penalty, which was commuted by other courts. Some eventually overturned fully some of those charges, although ultimately losing in essence years in prison. Lead Belly warned his listeners to stay woke to the dangers of extreme racial injustice. At a commencement address for Oberlin College, Ohio in June 1965, Dr. King's famous sermon was entitled, "Remaining Awake Through the Great Revolution." He was smart enough to avoid the black slang usage. It didn't go over well broadly. He said, in it he cited the most famous part of Rip Van Winkle's story. He said that most people remember only one thing about that tale of Rip Van Winkle, that somehow he slept for 20 years. But then, and here's King's words, there's another point in the story that is almost completely overlooked. It was a sign on the inn in the little town on the Hudson from which Rip had went up into the mountain for his long sleep. When he went up, the sign had a picture of King George III of England. When he came down 20 years later, the sign had a picture of George Washington, the first president of the United States. When Rip looked at the picture of George Washington, he was completely lost. He knew not who he was. This reveals that the striking fact about the story of Rip Van Winkle is not that he slept 20 years, but that he slept through a complete revolution. While he was peacefully snoring on the mountain, a great revolution had taken place in the world. There are still too many people who, in some great period of social change, fail to achieve the new mental outlooks that the new situation really does demand. There is just nothing more tragic than to sleep through a revolution. Are we? One of Dr. King's famous lines, that all humankind is tied together, all life is caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied together in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. For some strange reason, I can never be what I ought to be. This is his quote. I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. And you can never be what you ought to be until I am what I ought to be. This is the interrelated structure of reality. Then in 1966, a year or so later, the Reverend Dr. King then delivered the Ware Lecture at the Unitarian Universalist General Assembly, and his words are eerily prescient for us today. His title was, "Don't Sleep Through the Revolution." His main message was to the group of Unitarian Universalists who were struggling at that time to discern their place in the civil rights movement. It was a wake-up call to action. He said, the question is, what do you do when we find ourselves in such a period? Not everything was universally obvious, even to Unitarians of the time. As woke entered the broader cultural, political lexicon, its meaning began to shift, not so subtly. In the late 2010s, conservative commentators and politicians began using woke pejoratively, framing it as a symbol of excessive political correctness, cancel culture, and ideological overreach. On the one side, woke gained widespread popularity during the Black Lives Matter, BLM movement, especially after the 2014 police shooting of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri. Activists used "Stay Woke" as a rallying cry to remain vigilant against systemic racism and police brutality. The hashtag "Stay Woke" became a digital call to action against social media platforms. By 2017, woke was officially added to the Oxford English Dictionary, defined as being alert to injustice in society, especially racism. It had become a mainstream term associated with progressive values, including racial justice, gender equality, LGBTQ rights, and environmental activism. Woke became a polarizing buzzword. For some, it still signifies awareness and activism. For others, it represents virtue signaling, radical ideology, and even performative progressivism. Definition: what is performative progressivism? How is that a negative? It twists into superficial or self-serving expressions of progressive values, self-serving expressions of progressive values, even prioritizing visibility over meaningful action in social justice causes. Terms like woke mob, woke capitalism, woke indoctrination emerged, often used to criticize diversity initiatives, gender-affirming care, critical race theory, or CRT. I'll take the moment to expand CRT, critical race theory. In 2021, the Encyclopedia Britannica described CRT as an intellectual and social movement and loosely organized framework of legal analysis based on the premise that race is not a natural, biologically grounded feature of physically distinct subgroups of human beings, but a socially constructed or culturally invented category that is used to express and exploit people of color. I mean, this is a startling inversion. Interesting, the term has even been co-opted by some on the political right, with commentators noting the rise of the woke right that use similar tactics, such as cancel culture, to enforce conservative values. The cancel culture term unfolded extreme interpretations. In July 2020, former US President Barack Obama criticized cancel culture and woke mentality on social media, saying that people who do really good stuff have flaws. People who you are fighting may love their kids and share things with you. President Trump criticized cancel culture too in a speech in 2020, comparing it to totalitarianism, saying it was a political weapon used to punish and shame dissenters by driving them from their jobs and demanding submissions. But he was subsequently criticized soon thereafter as being hypocritical for having attempted to cancel a number of people and companies in the past and to this present day with comedians that you know. So what is the situation today for so many, if not all people in the world now, like Rip Van Winkle in his time missed? Is it the institution of democracy slipping away while the world rests or relaxes in its unwoke state? Will we someday awaken to find what we treasured and have strived for so long has shockingly vanished, disintegrated, stopped existing, turning like dreams, always so fleeting? We might tell the first one we meet that we had a really good dream, but just can't quite put our finger on it. Too bad. Damn. Our purpose as a church is not to shame or blame anyone personally for how woke you are or aren't, or even should be. Personally, I cannot say I feel woke myself or fully awoke. I know I'm not. But it's like we've been hypnotized, so many. What I can say is that I must be committed to staying alert and awake to all our own racisms, however subtle and inapparent in our present moment, in any particular present moment, to whatever my own tendencies toward white supremacy might consciously or even unconsciously be, and that I must be willing and eager to be called out on it. Our purpose as a diverse and free church committed to anti-racist work is, however, to continue to address here together this one thing that touches all our lives, whether we identify as a person of color or not. It is our commitment to help each other wake up, to be a part of this great awakening of this beloved community. From a grassroots call for racial awareness to a contested cultural symbol, woke's journey reflects broader societal polarizing tensions around identity, injustice, and political ideology. Today, the word is both a badge of honor and a term of derision, depending on who uses it, who overhears it. We just have to learn to resist claiming we are more than we are, and so prove to be. Buddha himself, to revealing what he had learned after meditating from under a Buddha tree Bodhi tree for 49 days, then making quite an impression on a man he passed by along the way, who asked him if he was indeed a divine being as he looked. He simply said, "I am awake." So let it be. You know who, gentlemen and emissary of love. Let's just play this little wrap up. And then it's a kind
you love him? Don't you never quit your brother to try to live